Okay, this is a quick video to go over kind of some features and how to set up the new Command Line Encoding exporter in Movie Render Queue in 427. So assuming you have the Movie Render Queue plugin enabled, if you go into Movie Render Queue, you'll see this new Command Line Encoder. Once you go in here, you'll see a bunch of errors and warnings, and it's basically telling you that Unreal can't find your ffmpeg executable and doesn't know what sort of codecs you want to use and what sort of container you want to use. And it's telling you to go into the project settings and kind of set all this stuff up for it. So if you pop it in the project settings and go under plugins, there's this movie pipeline CLI encoder. And if you hop in here, the first thing you'll see is, run this movie render pipeline, blah, 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 to see all of your available codecs. So if you're like me, you see that, and you're like, okay, great. Let's see all of my available codecs. So if you were to run this, you'll get a warning or an error. It basically means that it doesn't know where your ffmpeg executable is. So Epic is not going to ship a precompiled binary, and they will probably never ship a precompiled binary. So it'll be on the user to go out and kind of get whatever build or flavor of ffmpeg that they want, and install it, and then link the engine to it. So to just to speed this, like, this tool was made with ffmpeg in mind. You could theoretically, maybe use other command line encoders, but ffmpeg, will probably be the only one that's supported at this time. But you can try, like, RBIO or whatever. So if you don't have ffmpeg, you can, go here. You can get it from source and build it from source if that's what you want to do. Or you can go grab a precompiled version of it here. Like, if you, kind of don't know and you just want to get started, if you just go grab this one here is fine. It's built off the release, and it has a good set of default libraries. So you just grab that and install it. And then what you do, if you go in here, you can path to it. Like that. Or if you have it in your system path, here or here, like so, then you can just type ffmpeg.exe. And you'll know it's working if you run this command again, and you'll see all your codecs spit out. So, Unreal's not storing anything. It's basically like when you run the command, it's just firing up ffmpeg and asking it what codecs are available. So here's your audio codecs, here's your video codecs. So the next thing that you want to do is go in here, pick a video codec, pick an audio codec, and pick a container. So, just for right now, it's like MP4s, and we'll want like a H.264 pretty popular. So that's right here. So that's lib x264. And then like AC is a popular. So once you do that, you could, and you go over here, if you kind of nudge this thing, you'll see that, all those warnings go away. So you should be able to just run a render right now, and you'll get a video. Let's see if it'll pop in here. Yep, there you go. So there's your MP4, which is great. You can go in here to some of these settings, like if you wanted to name this, let's see a little test pop up here. You can name it, and then you can also use a format string here. So like, yeah, any of these guys, like if you just want to do like level name, and run it. Hopefully we'll see something called main pop up here. Name, cool. And you can leave this blank and it'll just name it the sequence name, I believe. Cool. So let's pop into here real quick and have a look. Okay, let's have a look at what it's doing. So this is going to be the actual ffmpeg command that UE will pass to ffmpeg. Where did that go? Come on. There's this guy right here. And you can find that in your output log. You just have to kind of go fishing for it a little bit. Right here, final command line arguments. So this is what it feeds to ffmpeg to be able to make that MP4. If we just kind of go through this real quick. So this f concat safe, this is your video input string, which is being called here. Like, this is just setting some log levels and hiding some messaging. But so this is your video input here, and if you had an audio input, it would go there as well. Here's where it's calling your different codecs, right here and here. Here is quality, the CRF16. So you'll see in movie render queue the different quality levels like low, medium, high, epic. So you can set that on your project. So you can set what low, medium, high, and epic mean to you. So CRF, I believe it goes from like 1 to 51, where the lower the number, the higher the quality, but the slower to encode. So you can set those numbers. And then, certain containers or file types want a bit rate as well. So you could set like a bit rate. That works. And then and then here's your output path. And then this output path will be based off of your sequence output path. Yeah. And then you'll see this thing here called additional local arguments. That's pointing to here. So you could put arguments here that you can insert into the command line. So like a pretty simple use case would be like, if you're rendering 4K images, but you want to produce like an HD MP4, right? So you could, let's have a look here. Also, one quick thing to note, if you're like troubleshooting, you're trying to figure out why things aren't working, and you want to, kind of go and copy this and bring it out to a command prompt, just because, a lot of times I will structure things out here just because it's a lot easier to see it more holistically. You have to add you'll see this text file here. So if you were to just run this, it would error. And the reason is this text file, so Unreal is making a text file with just a list of all of your frames, and it's running the ffmpeg command, and then when it's done, it's deleting that text file. So if you were to run this, it will error because that text file is not there. But if you wanted to keep that text file around to troubleshoot, if you go to debug options and click write all samples, and then if you were to render this again, we'll see a bunch of stuff pile in here. Yeah. So these are the tiles. You can just ignore these tiles, but double click. So yeah, so it's just creating a list here, which is why it's calling concat. So it's just going to concatenate through that list and pile them into the video. So yeah, so if you want to keep that around, you can keep that around there to troubleshoot. Let's go turn this back off. So that's just kind of like a good to know. Anyways, so yeah, let's go back to scale, right? So if you wanted to just scale your MP4, this would be the ffmpeg command. So here's your ball beauty render, your rate. So it's pulling the frame rate from the engine, or from sequencer, sorry. Here's your codecs, here's a quality, and then here's the scale call. And then, whoop, is that no? There it is. And then if you wanted to probe this, just to make sure that it, so there you go, HD. So how we would do that in Engine is we can just grab here and put these in the additional arguments, and it will insert this into the command line. So if we run this right now, it'll probably error, but it'll be good because I can kind of go over something else here. So yeah, so it just produced this error. And it's basically saying error opening input files. So if we go and we look at the log here, there it is. So our command line, we're starting off ffmpeg, doing some logs, setting some logs here. We're setting an argument to scale the output. Then we're stating our inputs, our codecs, and then our output. So basically, it thinks that this is an input command just because of where its position is in the command line. So, and that's because of this additional local arguments right here in this position. So if you were to go and you move this guy right here, make sure the spaces, and you run this again, it shouldn't error. Boop. Okay, cool. So there we are. There it is. We can probe that. And it's HD. If we were to take this away, run it again, and probe it, 4K. Okay, so it's working. You could also do something where, like, if you knew that you wanted to do, that scale for your whole project, you could also just hard path it in here, scale equals whatever. So you could just, put it right in there, but that'll do your whole project. Cool. So that's that. So let's do like a little bit of a more complicated use case scenario. Like, say you wanted to render a burn-in pass, but you didn't want to put that onto your actual frames because frames are going to comp, but you want to put that burn-in in your MP4. So if you go turn on burn-ins, take off composite final image. Let's turn off the command line encoding right now, and just to generate some files so we can mess with it in the command prompt. So if we go render this, there we go. So we see, we can just throw this away. So here's our burn-in, and here's our final image. So, sorry, excuse me. If we want to go do this in the command prompt, so we're running ffmpeg, here's our final image, then we're adding an input for the burn-in. We're running something called filter complex to overlay the two, setting our rate, and then we're kicking it out. And if we look for Sean test, see, there it is. There's a ball, there's our burn-in. So if we wanted to do this in Engine, just looking at the scale thing, we might have an issue because our additional arguments is going to be placed here. And what we're going to put in the additional arguments is we're going to want to grab it from here to here and add this on the shot level. And then I'll show you. So this is what we want to do. We're adding our ball input and we're running the compositing operation, which is the filter complex. But the issue right now is we have it, kind of in a position where it's assuming that it's an output argument. But we're calling an input when we're calling the burn-in. So I found there's kind of like a sweet spot for this thing for most use cases. And it's right here. It's like right after the video and audio inputs and right before you declare the codec. If you kind of nestle this guy right there, it hits most of the use cases, for me at least. So now that we have that, if we run ball final image, we got it. So we got our render and we got our burn. One thing to note, and I'll touch more on this later, is you notice that it will automatically run an encode for each render pass. So it's even encoding this guy. So in this scenario, it's encoding where it's overlaying the burn-in that we're stating over our ball render. And then here, it's overlaying the burn-in with the burn-in. Because it's just for each render pass, it's running the command for each render pass, and it's just replacing this variable. So if we look in the log, we'll see it run ffmpeg twice. Yep, once here, once here. So just keep that in mind. And we'll get to where that might kind of be problematic later on down the road. So now, say you want to do a burn-in and you want to scale it. So the ffmpeg command for that. So here's our input, filter complex. We're overlaying it. We're creating a stream. We're pulling that stream in. We're scaling it. We're sending that stream back out. We're mapping that stream to this file, to that output file. So if we run this, let's go look for HD. And we see that we have our overlay, and let's just make sure that it is HD and not 4K. We want HD. Yep. So that worked. So now, how do we do that in Engine? So what we're going to want to do is just grab it from right here to this input. So kind of the same thing as the scale. You just want to get your overlay input, and then you want to grab your whole filter complex argument and all the way out to where you map that stream to an output. So if we copy that guy in, put this guy here, and then the position that this guy is in now should be fine. And if let's go remove render local. So that export that you see there, that's it doing the transcoding. Now if we go look at this, we have our burn-in. And if we go to ffprobes, see that it is HD. Cool. So now, like, what if we really wanted to, go bananas, or like kind of a more complicated but common use case for command line encoders that I've used in the past, and that's like, you do your beauty renders, your high-res beauty renders, and say you want to kick out like a, HD MP4 for dailies, and then like a MXF for editorial, and then like a ProRes QuickTime for like a client review, or maybe, the client editorial wants ProRes. Um, how do we do that? So we'll go over the command line for that first. So this, starts to look a little bit like gibberish, but this is ffmpeg. So we have our input, we have our overlay. We're starting our filter complex. We're stating the overlay. We're splitting that overlay now into 3 streams. We've got our MP4, our MXF, and our QuickTime. We're pulling in our MP4 stream, we're scaling it to HD, and we're kicking it out to this mapping. We're pulling in our MXF, or stream number 2, that we just called MXF 720. We're scaling it to 1280 720. We're burning in some time code to it because it's for editorial, and then we're mapping it out to a stream called MXF 720 out. Then our MOV, our QuickTime, plugging in, scaling it to 4K, kicking it back out. So now this is when we're writing out the file. So we're setting, rates and qualities. We're setting the ProRes codec. We're mapping the file, and we're rendering out to this particular QuickTime. And then here's our MXF. So MXFs are a bit more finicky than everything else. So like, depending on your frame rate and your resolution, it wants a certain pixel format and it wants a certain bit rate. So you can just look that up. And then, here's our DNX HD codec for Avid. I'm kicking that out. And then here's our H.264 MP4 that we're kicking out for dailies. So render that. We'll see all these here. Cool. And then let's just make sure our time code worked. Yeah, time code. Cool. All right, so how do we do this in Engine, right? So you would think, what we could do is we could just grab all this stuff from right here, right? And just, you can put that on the shot level. So let's try that. So we can put that all on the shot level. And then what we want to do is we're kind of hijacking the whole back end of this command line argument here. So like, where we're stating qualities and output paths, we're stating multiple qualities, multiple output paths, and multiple codecs. So we don't want the engine to do that for us. We're going to specifically state that on the shot level. So you can just delete the rest of this stuff and you can run it, accept, and render. And you'll see it encoding here. Now, if you were to go look at this, this is black. And the reason that this is black is the reason that I talked about before, how the engine is running the command twice. It's running it for the overlay, and it's running it for your beauty render. It's going to run it for every single render pass that you have. So if we were to go look here at the log, you'll see that it's running this command twice. Once where this particular text file is going to be filled with your beauty renders, and then once where this particular text file is going to be filled with a list of your burn-in frames. So what you just did is you ran it once, it worked, and it looked great. And then you ran it again, and you overlaid your burn-in with your burn-in, which creates a black frame. So, I'll bet if we were to go and turn off the burn-in now and run it again, it'll probably work. And yeah, so it just fixed everything. So, it's not ideal. It's, it's just, it's something to keep in mind. That's all. This is the first iteration of the tool, so definitely lots of room to grow, and it's a it's definitely a victory that they started to put stakes in the ground to get this thing going, which is great. But there's some things that I'm kind of suggesting internally, and would definitely like to hear some feedback from you all on what can be improved as well. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful, and